Hello, this is Brian Ryo with assignment number 6 for the graphics class. Assignment number 6 covers lighting. The very first question was to go back into the pre-made models and add the appropriate information that corresponds with lighting, that being the normal of each one of the vertexes or vertices. So right here on the screen I have the pyramid with repeated texture but without a texture on it. Going briefly into the code, the only thing that was changed is that it still utilizes the color light shader, but to add the appropriate information, what I do for after I've declared all of the windings, I take the cross product of two of the vectors formed by the triplet of vertices, and after taking the cross product of those two vectors I get a normal, and I assign that normal to the first pvert, and since that will be the same for the entire face, I merely just copy that value and assign it to the next vert and the third vert for that completed triangle. Moving on to question number 2. Question number 2 was to create a new shader for light and textures, as well as to make the appropriate class. So the right here you can see the demo. Here it has a texture, and I left the texture the same for the walls just to illustrate that it works. For the texture itself, the only difference between this one and the shader color light was adding the coordinate to the layout. Right here you can see text coordinate, and going into the shader that was made, I created this color light plus texture. The VS output now requires us to pass in the float 2 for the UV coordinate. There was no change to the VS output, but for the PS output, after we calculate the Phong lighting, we multiply the color of that pixel to the lit color in order to return that texture under lighting conditions. The third test was the multiple lighting, very much the same. Right here you can see light 1, light 2, and light 3 is the one that's currently spinning around. The main thing that was done, right here you can see I pass in parameter 1, 2, or 3 for the appropriate spotlights. And each one of them, under this case, is the same one. But going into the actual shader, I have the multiple shader. And what this does is I have an array of point lights and an array of spotlights, and that information will be passed into the shader being this multiple lights shader. And again, the information is very much the same. However, right here for the pixel shader, I take into consideration every single one of the additional point lights, and I add them to the ambient, diffuse, and specular. So in this case I have 3, moving on to point light 2 and point light 3. I add all those numbers up together, and that gives us the light when you take into consideration all of the lighting in the scene. That is it for this assignment. Thank you very much.